Hello, Tarot Tube. It is March 1st, 2025 here in the United States of America, and we're having a sunny day, which is a lovely thing. Kind of helps you to feel a little lighter and thinking maybe winter's not going to last absolutely forever after all. But I'm here to talk about the month that has just gone past, February, which is Black History Month. Now, okay, a couple things here. Terminology. I'm going to use the phrase Black History Month. It's the one that I personally feel the most comfortable with, and I realize that terminology changes, and please rest assured, I mean no offense to anybody. That's just what I've landed on for this year. Now, and you also can probably see the color of my hands, and you're like, why is this lady talking to us about Black History Month? Here's why. This may have been the last Black History Month that we have in the United States of America for the next few years because we have some people in the federal government who are actively trying to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. And that is going to affect people of color, among whom we count Black Americans. Why do I care about this? In my ancestry, well, first of all, I have, but this is my community. My community is a lot of different kinds of people. It's not just people that look like me or think like me or believe the things that I believe. So I care about the people in my community. So I care about Black History Month. On a spiritual level, so that's just like be a human being. On a spiritual level, I've done a lot of ancestral work in the last few years, and I do believe in ancestors of place. If you live in the United States of America, then the history of African Americans here, enslaved people here, all people of color, but especially Black Americans, our country was built on the backs of slave labor and indentured labor, and to ignore that is to just sort of pretend that you don't live where you live. So I believe that we have a responsibility, if we live here, to honor our ancestors of place. And even though my skin is very white, and I have ancestors who have been in this country for long enough that they were alive during slavery, and we can only guess what that means. I don't know who all of them were, but I believe that I have a spiritual responsibility to honor ancestors of place, and that includes Black Americans. So for that reason, I celebrate Black History Month in my own quiet way. I don't go out really and do anything publicly, but it's certainly part of my spiritual practice. Now, here are two decks, and a book. This is the book that I focused on this week. I believe it's a young adult book, and it was written by a descendant of Ida B. Wells, and it's a lovely, lovely book. And here's a little bookmark. I'm going to get to the decks, don't worry. Here's a lovely bookmark that I made. Probably recognize Frederick Douglass. Nice little quote from him. I went to the Newark Museum in honor of Black History Month to look at some art and just ponder those kinds of things. So this was a little make and take thing they had. Okay, here we go. We're getting to the decks. Yay. All right, the Hoodoo Tarot. So I did a study with this with an online group. Is that 2 years ago, I guess? I'm just going to kind of flip through this while I'm talking about it. And at first I was a little uncomfortable. I was like, is it okay for me to use this deck? I'm quite white. Is this all right? And that was nice because that was one of the things that we discussed as a group. And after the discussion, I did feel better about using a deck like this, especially since I lived in New Orleans for a time, and so some of this culture or history, I just sort of picked it up because you're there, and then you know, I was there. So this is a lovely, lovely deck. It's beautiful. I did modify it a little bit for myself. I edged it with all these different shades because black people don't come in one color, right? And what can I say about this deck? First of all, I think everybody should consider working with it. It is say it's a book for root workers. I don't know that you have to necessarily be a root worker to work with this deck. I do think you have to be open to the experience of Black Americans and their history to work with it effectively. You have to have an open mind. My personal experience, because I started working with it during ancestral work. So even though all of my ancestors are genetically, my family ancestors, my DNA, that's all white, this was such a powerful deck. I felt like my ancestors were speaking directly to me through this deck. I was able to identify specific people in my family tree, and it was a really interesting experience to be able to connect with individuals and have imagery in front of me that most certainly did not, it wasn't like that's not what they looked like. But I just got the most amazing messages, incredibly powerful, so powerful that I honestly do not use this deck very much. It almost intimidates me because when I pick this deck up and I pull cards from this deck, I know I'm going to get something. We're not taking a little stroll through a flower garden when I use this deck. It's going to be powerful. It's going to, I don't want to say haunt me, but the messages I get will stay with me for an extended period of time. What's that expression? Use will vary, or something. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily going to be your experience. I suspect that it has to do with my intention when I picked up the deck, what I was going to use it for, and it was a result of that study that I did with that group and the energy that was coming from all those people in that group and why they were there and what they were doing with the deck. But it has stayed for years. And yeah, I think this is a great deck. It's a mass market deck. It's not a big investment. I encourage you, if at all possible, to get it from, if you want to pursue this, if at all possible, try to get it from a local shop near you, or go on to eBay, look for people who are selling this deck. And if you are fortunate, you'll be able to find one that is Black owned. So I would encourage you to do that. Support the community as much as you can, especially at this time in our history here in the United States. Okay, that's my first deck. And my second deck, and mind you, I did experiment with a lot of decks to see what was going to really resonate with me. And the second deck that I chose was this one, the American Renaissance Tarot. So fabulous packaging, very impractical, a real space eater, but pretty beautiful. Again, it's a mass market deck. You shouldn't have any trouble finding it if you want it, and same applies for where you buy it. Don't forget, if you go to your local metaphysical shop or, bookstore and they don't have this, you can ask them to get it for you. That's possible. You don't have to go for the instant gratification of certain mass market distributors who shall not be named. I needed to drink a drink of water to get through that statement. All right. Why do I like this one? So this is set in a certain period of time, the American Renaissance, as defined in this deck. Let's see, I had pulled some out that I wanted to show you. And the reason I like it is because, is this it? Yes, this is it. Okay, this is the section. So let's get the box out of the way. Now that you've seen the box, and here are the backs. Oh yeah, let's look at the back. I didn't talk about the backs here. See how we've incorporated the U.S. and different movements in these two backs. How beautiful is this with, the South and the key? Yeah, great imagery. And this one, you know, I'm not going to get into the whole history of spiritual movement of the U.S. During this time period, but that's a good imagery for it. And here are our creators for this one. So now just kind of step through this one and why I like it. This one I have not modified. I don't know if I will, actually. I don't enjoy the cardstock on this, so it's like I don't know. I just use it as it is. The reason I like this is because it is about, they're calling it the American Renaissance. It's just about stuff that happened in the United States in a certain period of time, and it just incorporates the people of the U.S. in it, right? So that this is part of our history. It's not Black history, it's just history. And I really appreciate that. I think that a lot of us would like it if everybody who contributed to the building of this country were included in our history texts in a way that was really representative of their contributions and how they have affected the culture of where we live. But it's not. But here in this deck, I think they've done a pretty good job of it, right? So this particular suit deals with the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, and so that's why we get images like that. It's just, I think it's so well done. I like the art. I think the art is really accessible. They have depicted these people in a way that they can be recognized pretty easily. And if you don't, you just go in here and you read this wonderful story. So for example, this Four of Coins. The first time I pulled this card, I was like, I do not understand what I'm looking at here. So let's see, let me just pull it out and we'll look at it together because you can kind of have the experience with me a little bit. So we know what the Four of Coins means. But here, there's this whole story about this slave named Harriet Jacobs who got up into a small attic crawl space where she lived for, if you can believe this, 7 years. And she did that to escape a cruel slave master. And it's amazing. And she wrote a autobiographical book. And, you know, it's part of our history. And I love the way it was woven into this deck. So that you can just use this as a tarot deck. But as you do that, you're learning something about where you live, if you live here. If you don't live here, then you're learning something about another country and a group of people who live there. And how can we understand where we are now unless we're willing to think about the past and how we got here? Yeah. So that's it. These are my 2 decks that I really, really enjoyed using during February 2025. Black History Month here in the United States of America. I hope it keeps continuing to be a thing. The Hoodoo Tarot and the American Renaissance Tarot. So now we're going to move into March, which is Women's History Month. So I'll be looking at decks about that and coming back at the end of the month to talk about that. And yeah, stay strong out there. Stay in touch with your ancestors. Respect where you came from, and thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this, please hit the like button. I appreciate it so very much. I really, really appreciate every like that I get. All right, take care. Find joy, even if it's cloudy outside. Make the effort. It's worth it. Bye-bye.